Yo, what's up? I am Clee, the visionary, and this is the Build Your Vision podcast, the number one podcast in the world that develops you as you develop others. Oh, yeah, I switched it up there. If this is your first time on the show, you don't get that I switched it up, but welcome. You know, my mission here is to help you become the person that could build the thing, because someone needs what you are building, but you can't build it if you haven't developed into the person who can. So I want to ask you this question. I'm sure that you've heard the word brand before, right? And as a leader, you know that your brand is important. But do you know specifically what your brand is? I had to think about this for myself, and you'll understand what I'm talking about when I get to the conversation that I had with a very, very special gentleman who I'm going to introduce to you soon. But do you know specifically what your brand is? And do you know how to define it in a way that makes you stand out, but keeps you on mission? Because let's admit it, it's very easy to get distracted, disjointed, and even discouraged when it comes to building your vision and your brand, especially when it comes to creating content, whether that's physical or digital. And that's why I brought someone very special on the show today. And if you listen to part 2 of the You Inc. series of this podcast, you already know who he is. But I gave you guys an extremely abbreviated version of who he was in that series. I'm going to expand it, and he's going to blow you away in this episode. His name is Kirk Nugent. Kirk is a live video expert and coach, and he's the founder of Composition LLC and the How It Works live show. I met Kirk at Oakwood University when I was a student, and he was the chief information officer of the university at that time. We've both gone our separate ways since, and it has been phenomenal watching Kirk build his vision and his brand. In our conversation, he shares how to find your lane, develop your voice, and stay on mission throughout the process. Even if, I know this applies to a lot of people and it might apply to you, even if you're multi-gifted and multi-passionate. But before Kirk shows us how it all works, you know how we do. Let's get into the intro music. You're listening to the Build Your Vision podcast, a podcast series about maneuvering the ups and downs of building a life that you're proud of, captured in real time. A community where dreamers become doers and doers become world changers. Let's go.
When you talk about, how did the brand begin? I wanted to give you both of those pieces. So from the one perspective of How It All Works was born out of the desire to really capture this layering of skill sets and passions that I have, that I feel God has instilled in me. And then the skill sets that came along the way really kind of came from this journey, as I always like to say, from my lived experience, right? People can argue all kinds of other things, but you cannot argue someone's lived experience.
Nope, exactly.
So that's why I bank, and I guess the term is hinge, all of what I do on those pieces.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, though, because a lot of people are saying they're like you, and it's harder, I think, because I'm one of those people too, and like you, that are talented and gifted and have specialties in multiple areas.
Multiple.
And trying to figure out, okay, which market do I go with, the one that I think could be the most profitable? Like, do I go with the one that I know that I could do if I was like sleep and I could do it in my sleep? Or do I go with the one that I have the most fun doing?
So I have always been fascinated with a lot of different things, a lot of different things. In fact, one of my nicknames was energy, because it just seemed like I had energy to run here, there, everywhere. And one of the things that I struggled with, both as a public speaker and as a content creator, was niching down. This is one of the terms that everybody knows, everybody's familiar with. It's like, how do you niche down? How do you find that space that is very specific and unique? I was like, no, I want to do tech. I want to do media. I want to do leadership. In fact, that's actually what's on my shirt. And I was like, I don't want to niche down. I don't need to. Mm-hmm. So I thought, and one of the things that I recognized is that the layers of the things that I was interested in was the niche. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I will often say to coaching clients whenever we're trying to understand, like, what is your thing? What's the question that you answer? What is your topic in your area of expertise? First of all, it's got to come from your lived experience. Yeah. But second, it's got to be the layering. So I am, as I like to say, self-confessed Jesus geek. I am a Christian. I am a geek. I love media. and I've been in leadership for years. So now when you layer them all together, you have a smaller niche.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was just to do tech, I'd be, one voice
Right.
in a million.
Small fish in a big
But
pond.
if you do tech and media,
Yeah.
it starts to get smaller. Then when you do tech, media, and leadership, it even gets smaller. So the layering of it is actually the cheat code. So it was in trying to figure out, what do I do that really helps me to, they didn't have the term multi-passionate back when I was trying to figure some of this stuff out. But multi-passionate is so perfect because it embodies everything that I'm talking about right now. But
Yeah.
that's, I was saying to some friends one evening, I was like, no, I'm really trying to help people figure out how it all works. And there was silence on the call. Ding. And one of my friends says to me, do you have that domain name? And of course I didn't respond because I was already going to GoDaddy.
Right. Typing. Hold on a second.
So give me 1 second. But I went to GoDaddy, tried to buy it, and the WORKS was not there. And I was like, oh, but WERKS actually would be better, just given the current climate. So I typed in how it all works, HOWITALLWERKS, and it was there. Purchased that joint and every other iteration of it, and branded on that joint as well, because it really embodied, like, how does it all work together? How does it all work? Ultimately, how does it all work? Like, how does all the tech work? I have all these things that happen in technology. We never see all of those pieces. All these things that happen in media, we don't get to see all those pieces. We don't know the inner workings, the ins and outs. We see it show up on the TV screen, or we binge watch the show, or we jump on the internet and we see the website. We don't know the background. And so my idea was, let me show people how it all works.
It's really about the layering.
And
that's how you create your own lane for yourself that no one could do, besides the fact that you're a unique individual that God created you to be. So then again, no one can do what you're doing the way you're doing it anyway.
That's it.
But when it comes to articulating in the marketplace, this is important.
Let me just throw one other thing on.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to miss this. Somebody's probably saying to themselves right now, they're listening to the podcast, just like, yeah, that sounds all well and good, but how did I translate that for myself? And I'll just share this with you, that you translate that by narrowing down your multi-passionate self, right? All the different things that you have, try to put them into 3 different buckets, very broad, high level buckets. That bucket should be able to be defined in 2 words, if not 1. Tech, media, leadership, 3 buckets. Once you distill them down to 3 buckets, now you start creating content in all 3 lanes. And once you start creating content in all 3 lanes, you need to be open and sensitive to the doors that are opening. When the doors open, like for me, it opened with live streaming. Then I put all my tech and all my leadership behind the media, and I went after live streaming. So now I'm still multi-passionate.
Yeah.
Right. But I've branded myself as a live video coach and live video strategist. But there's leadership in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tech in there. There's a huge amount of media in there. So I wanted to give people just something practical. These are from a very basic high level standpoint. Now, the last thing I'll say to you is you probably need a coach in the community, but that's a shameless plug.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be me. You could be somebody else, but those are critical pieces that are going to help you along the way. But if you're looking for your thing, you haven't done the legwork of mining the gold of your story, because that's a whole other process that you want to go through. What is my unique thing, my unique niche? This is something I learned in public speaking, Cleavon. The guy who has no legs and no arms, he's always booked, because his story is so, you just look at him and like, okay, if this guy gets out of bed in the morning, why am I not motivated, right? So he's always booked. He's always speaking. So what do you have that makes you unique? What in your story that nobody can take away from you? So I like to walk through that process. I say to mentees, I should say, especially in college, that high school is a time to blend in. College is a time to understand what makes you different.
Yeah.
Because what makes you different, what makes you stand out, is what's going to get you paid.
Yes.
That's what's going to get you paid.
Yep.
What makes you different. I don't want to blend in college. I want to understand. Okay, so I am a third culture kid, meaning my parents are Jamaican. They migrated to the United States. And then I lived in this land as an American, African American, but not quite. Does it make
Right.
sense?
Yeah.
It's a very specific lane.
Mm-hmm.
Then I am, my dad is a pastor. My brother's a pastor. I'm not a pastor, but then I'm kind of am a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the geek side of things. I'm a techie. I really play up all of the things that make me uniquely me.
Yep. Yep.
And that becomes your brand.
I want to go into, because when I'm working with my clients, I always want to say, hey, okay, this is the goal. These are the options you have, but what are some obstacles that you think could get in the way? Let's take those into account before we get too happy. Let's make sure that we've prepared for when those things come. What were some obstacles or challenges that you went through going through this process of building your vision?
Challenge. So main challenge, of course, is how do I make this desire or passion financially solvent, right? How do I make it viable? Because at the end of the day, I like to eat, we like AC, we want cars, and our kids are in private schools. So there had to be a monetary, this just can't be a hustle, a side project. I needed to figure out how I was going to make this lucrative. And so one of the things I had to identify very quickly, and this is something that I think a lot of people do backwards, is that they have the idea, they have the quote unquote popularity, and then they figure out the business model. No. I said to one client, I was like, going viral is only good if you have all the systems in place. Yeah. If you go viral and you don't have all in place, it's actually a nuisance.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen people fold because they went viral. Not to mention, like, we're not going to preach, but not to mention that viral is only a good term in online. Like, every other aspect of viral is bad, but I'm just going to leave y'all alone with that one. You can pick that up on your own time. But we figured out how to monetize being on YouTube before we even created one video. And what that was is we understood that the crux of YouTube is discoverability. Discoverability, that know, like, and trust factor.
Yep.
And one of the things I recognize is that I have the ability to do a show for me, which means I have all the pieces in place to do a show for somebody else. So the best advertisement for my remote production services is my show.
Yeah.
And so said, so done. Before month 1 was done, folks were calling, hey, can you do a show for us? Hey, season 2, episode 6, we want that exact design. How much? They're not even calling with, can you give us a quote? They've already decided in their mind, I want him to do it. Why? Because your live stream is your digital storefront. And there's no greater way for people to experience your greatness than for them to see you do it live. So the challenge was 2 challenges. One being, how do I make money off of this? And I've shared with you some of how we kind of overcame that. But the second challenge, totally different challenge, was, when do we take the leap?
Yes.
When does it make sense to? And I'm gonna lie to you. I should have taken the leap when I left Oakwood. I look back now and I see it very clearly. That was the time God was saying, this is the time I want you to take the leap. I did not. Had I left and done what I needed to do at that moment, when the pandemic came, I would not have been building the brand. I would have had the brand.
Ooh, yeah.
See, so when what ended up happening is, because God knew I needed to leave and do my own thing, he caused me to take a job at a place that, listen, I love where I went. Let's take Community College, phenomenal people, phenomenal place, great leadership. I was not supposed to be there.
Right.
And so now I become a frustration in this setting, in this environment.
Yeah.
And so that becomes a challenge, because now I'm like, oh, man, I don't want to be frustrated out of a position.
Right.
But I recognize that what God was doing was like, I am trying to give birth to this thing, and you're holding on for dear life.
What kept you holding on?
Just security.
Right.
Security, under the idea that I am working and me working is what sustains me. That's a myth.
Yeah. That's
a myth.
Was it the frustration that finally it got to a point where it was unbearable and you was like, I have to, like, it's burning inside of me, I have to do it? Or was it like,
I ended up saying to my boss, I'd like to put in my notice, but I'm not leaving to go anywhere. don't want to work here anymore.
Mhm.
And he was like, no problem. He wasn't surprised by this. We had private conversations. He's like, no problem. Let me talk with the president. Let's see, maybe you could give us, give me the actual letter. And so I gave him a letter and it had 4 weeks notice on there. And I told him, I'm willing to amend that. We can make it 6 months. I didn't have a preference. Your boy went to the president. The president was like, you could go today. Today. And so God made it very simple.
Yes. Very.
and then here's the flip side of it, right? So the president said, you must leave today. And the HR calls me and says, okay, we've disabled your accounts and all this stuff, which is very funny for a CIO, right? Because they had to actually call my second in charge and ask him to disable my account. And so he comes into my office and he's like, hey, they just asked me to disable your account. I'm like, it's okay, go ahead and do it. That's how it works. But I get into the HR lady's office and she's like, well, the 4 weeks notice that you put on your resignation letter, we're going to honor it. So I got a 4 week head start paid to start my business.
So
that's how God ultimately put that thing together.
Wow. Yeah, he put, just in case you didn't know for sure if it was me.
Just in case. Just in case. And I think one of the things that is not said as often for entrepreneurs is that I cannot bless or curse the calls I receive, the emails that come in. I can try to theorize, because I did this, they saw that, and then they called me. But the truth of the matter is, as an entrepreneur, every single project you get, every business opportunity that comes your way, if you're a believer, you must recognize that this is coming from the hand of God. So it is this is a faith journey that I had never experienced before.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And I see that over and over, usually again, where it's, you hold on a little too long, and it's that unique, like almost divine frustration. And you were good before, but all of a sudden a switch kind of flips and you're like, I can't do this. I can't do it. Oh yeah. And that's how you know that you're being called to something else.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
I love getting clear before we go into content. We're heading toward content soon. Like, let's get clear on why you are doing this. I think Andy Stanley says, one of the best things a leader could do is when he's about to make a decision, say, why am I doing this? Get an answer, and then come back and say, why am I doing this really? Yeah. And I really encourage people to do that. So for you, what is your why behind the brand that you have built?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I'll say it very simply. It is because I know that there are people out there who have two sides, who have a vision, who have an idea, who have a product, who have a service, and it could literally change lives, but they're not putting it where everybody can get to it. So right. That's one of the reasons why I love live video. Coaches, consultants, authors, businesses, brands, products, solutions, services. Some of them I've come across, some of them that I've been able to help. As a guy that I'm working with right now, how he is not being interviewed on CNN on a weekly basis is a marvel to me because of what he's sharing from a financial perspective. It's just ridiculous. And I'm so glad that I'm able to work with him and get his message out there.
Yeah.
So that is one of my huge why is I recognize God has given me the ability to help folks broadcast their greatness, broadcast their brand. That's the first piece. The second piece is I recognize that as a media professional, as a IT professional, you are also called to be a minister. Mm-hmm. And that is something that, my entire lived experience informs. One of the number one questions I got from students at Oakwood when they heard I came directly from Africa to work there, and they knew that I was in Africa on mission assignment, is not, is Wakanda real? Like, what does vibranium look like? None of the above. What they asked me, how did you become a missionary as an IT guy? How did you become a missionary? Like doctors, nurses, teachers even, right? Pastors, preachers, sure. But IT? And my response to them as an IT professional, God has given you these unique skills and talents, and he will require it from you because you are a minister too. And I'm telling you, you could see it wash over them like, wow.
Yeah.
I've always felt called.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to go into ministry. I'm like, yes, you're called to do exactly what you're doing right now. It doesn't have to be in a pulpit. So those are my huge, massive, crazy, ridiculous whys. And those are some of the things I try to really push on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that is so awesome. I watched a sermon from Dr. Darius Daniels last night, and it got to this part in the sermon where he was like, I was reading Isaiah 43, and I read it this morning again for myself to just like double check. And he's saying, because he does a lot of coaching. I'm in fact one of his coaching programs, and he was like, I always thought the point of life was for you to fulfill your purpose. And he was like, I was reading this scripture, and it just I completely misunderstood it. And it's Isaiah 43 verse 7, I believe, where it says, God was saying to the Israelites, I created them for my glory. Yeah. And he was like, that just broke me. When I tell you that hit me like, I was like, oh my gosh, everything we do is for the glory of God. Whether you're in IT, whether you're in media, whether you're in sales, whether you're in the pulpit, whatever it is, it's for the glory of God. So you could be a missionary. You could be doing mission work anywhere, in anything. It's just about how are you approaching it? Are you approaching it for your glory? Or are you approaching it for the glory of God?
Come on.
And man, I was reading that thing like, Lord, I'm sorry. I've been looking at this the wrong way. I was trying to do my purpose.
Yeah.
And your purpose is good because he designed you for that thing.
Yeah.
You got to remember.
There's nothing wrong with that piece. But that motivator, I'm going to be honest with you, man. There are times where I do an introductory call with a potential coaching client, right? Mm-hmm. Discovery call. And it's a half hour. It's not the full hour. And one of the things I'm absolutely looking for in that call is, are they a person of faith? Because if they are not, I don't go out of my way to ask them, because to be honest with you, whether they say yes or no, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a person of faith.
Right. That's true.
So I have very specific questions and conversation that I try to bring up in this half hour session that helps me to understand what their why is. Mm-hmm. And that why is so critical, because if your why is, I'm just trying to get the bag. I want popularity, notoriety, and fame just for me.
Yeah.
That becomes difficult to coach, because that why is actually not sustainable. Mm-hmm. That why is not big enough to get you over the hurdles and the obstacles and the issues, the struggles, stresses, strife that will come in the journey. So it's so critical. I love what you just shared right there.
Yeah.
For your glory. My God.
Yeah. I mean, and even it's hard. And I'm speaking to the person that's listening right now, that you are ambitious. Like, that about you. That's why you're listening to this show. And you're trying to build something that you feel tugged and called to build. But there's this thing when it comes to being a person of faith where you're teetering the line between being extremely ambitious and having faith. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like contentment and complacency. It's like this.
Oh my God.
It's like this thin line that you're trying to like. Yeah, you about to say something? Go ahead.
No. You know what? This is one of the slogans, or one of the taglines that people know me for, is that we don't do humble on the live. And the reason why I say that, because some people look at that and they're like, that is just the most cocky, in your face type of statement. Like, where's the humility in that? Like, where's the, glory for God in that? And here's the thing. The opposite is also true. If God has gifted you in a specific thing, for you to hide it, for you to not shine it, for you to dumb it down because other people can't handle it, is also equally as bad.
Yes.
So what I said in the live is like, this is a space where I don't know if you follow CrossFit, but the CrossFit Games just finished yesterday or day before. And Tia Claire Toomey won. She's the 6th time being the fittest woman on earth. Okay.
Jeez.
When she is not competing, so humble, She's helping people clean up. But when the whistle blows, it's like a lion emerges.
Yeah.
She recognizes that there is a time for that humility thing not to be here. I'm now going to show you what I can do. We need to have spaces where we can say, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
And it's okay
Yeah.
that you can't do it this way. Because this is what God has uniquely gifted me to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
I'm not going to do it your way. I'm not going to get in your lane. I think you're phenomenal right where you are. But let me tell you something about what I do. Can't nobody do, because this is how God built me.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no imbalance here. This is not juxtaposition. There's no idiosyncrasy. This is not a imbalance. They can live harmoniously together. I can be humble and still say to you, you're not going to find anything better than me.
Yeah.
Not on this one.
Yeah.
So
it's so good. It's so good. I was watching that it's on Netflix. Dave Chappelle, he's giving his speech, his acceptance speech at Duke Ellington. He's one of the most phenomenal communicators I've ever seen. He just beautifully combined just like the humility of the moment, but also with like, look, I am the best in the game at this. Like, you're not gonna find. And I was like, you cannot not love him at that moment, because it's just like, it's so aspirational, but it's also like so humble at the same time. It's amazing.
It's that mix, it's that blend. And here's the I always quickly add, you don't want to go through what I went through to get where I am, to have these skills, to be as good as I am in this particular vein. I had to go through fire.
Yeah.
Anybody who's operating in peak performance, whether it's in the business world, whether it's in finance, authors, leadership, whether it's coaching, consulting, whether it's in sports, it doesn't matter. They are willing to sacrifice more than the others are.
Yeah.
To get to peak performance.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has a quote about that. It's like, the difference is sacrifice. That's the only difference between where I am and where you are.
Where you are. Yeah.
I mean, he's 7'2" tall, but for the most part, when it comes to other fields,
No, I mean, Kobe said it as well. I mean, his personal coach was like, I routinely tried to get to the gym before Kobe. And it got, I would come in, okay, let me come in at 5, let me come in at 4:30, let me come in at 4. And I'm sitting here, every time he gets in, he's like, this guy is still here. So it got to the point now he was like, what time do you come in? It's like, I come in early enough to get in the reps necessary for me to do what I need to do. Y'all not willing to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're there, but there is something you're willing to do that in. And
Exactly.
this is where, kind of bring it all back together.
Yep.
There is something that you're willing to do that. And in that thing, listen, nobody can touch you. I'm coaching a lady right now. In her story, in her path, there is abuse. There is molestation. There's all these things. Would she have chosen them? Absolutely not. Would she wish them on her worst enemy? Absolutely not. But she now uses them to speak to a very specific audience, and can't nobody talk to them like she can.
Like she can.
Because of her lived experience.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, now you just have to do the work to find what that thing is for you.
There it is. We don't instinctively, as human beings, we do not take enough time to consider our own stories.
Yep.
And in our stories are nuggets of wisdom that we can share with others. And it's non-negotiable because it's your story.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this book, Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
I love it.
He has a sequel called Find Your Why. And it's co-authored with 2 other gentlemen. And when I tell you, this book changed my life, man. And it's what I teach all the people that get clarity coaching from me. It's like, you have to find that thing, because the thing is, people try to create a why. No. You discover it. Come on. It was always there. It was, you just have to take the time to go back. Like you said, go through your story, because the things have been there. And I was having an off call conversation with someone, and they were like, because I was telling about this community I'm trying to build online, and they're like, something that I really do admire about you is you've always been consistent. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, I haven't. If I was, I'd be a lot farther along right now. I've taken some falls, but they were like, no, not. I don't mean consistent as like always putting out something every single day or whatever. I mean, you've had the same message from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're right. I've listened back to old episodes of the show that are terrible, by the way. But I was saying the exact same thing because it was always inside of me. It was always there. And I finally was able to take the time to be able to articulate it now.
Understanding your why and the question that you have to answer for people is critical. That's what we've been talking about thus far. But your why, because it comes from your lived experience, it also informs who your target audience is. I dare say that your target audience has a very similar lived experience to you. And so now your target audience, once you've identified them, once you've put together that profile, and I'm talking about to be specific. I was on Social Media Marketing World's podcast with Michael Stelzner. Yeah, I was on the podcast, and one of the things he had me do in a pre-show meeting, not the show, we had a pre-meeting before the show, where he says to me, Kirk, I need to introduce you to Amy. Amy is the name of his avatar, and he begins to rattle off all the demographics of Amy. Amy is a middle-aged woman, 39 to about 45. She works in a boutique marketing shop. He goes down the line. Now, does that mean his podcast only services Amy? No, he recognizes this is his target.
Yeah.
And he gave it a name. I just want y'all to understand this thing.
Yeah.
So once you understand your target audience, guess what? Your target audience has a preferred method.
Yes.
And so if your target audience, this is, really long answer to come back to this one statement. If your target audience is not a fan of live, then don't do live. If your target audience is not a fan of Instagram, why are you on Instagram? You see how simple it becomes? Once I identify my target audience, my target audience is business workers. Okay, so LinkedIn, go. Set up shop, never leave.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, because that's what LinkedIn is for. That's where your audience is.
Yeah.
Go where your audience is so that you can be discovered, so the algorithm can help you, so that you can put your content into the hands of those that need it most. Your target audience are the people who, when they see your content, they're like, oh, this is the pain reliever I've been waiting for. I had a headache all day long, and this content just soothed it. It's gone now. It's gone. That is a desired result for your content.
Yeah.
I'll shut up now.
No, man, you better preach, man, because that is good. I mean, and Mike Stelzner, I just sent this to somebody the other day that another social media marketing agency that I'm affiliated with. And I was sending him an episode. I'm like, this dude, I don't know if you listen. I was listening to his crypto business podcast.
Absolutely phenomenal.
And he asked the absolute best questions. It's like he's in my mind.
This dude.
And but now we get to see why. And it doesn't just happen on accident.
No, because he treats his podcast like his pulpit as a pastor. He guards that thing like don't touch this, don't touch that. We're not going down that rabbit hole. I don't want to hear anything about this. You see my point? So there's some things that he needed to share in that pre-meeting that I think were absolutely critical. Now, that does not to say that you guys shouldn't, anybody that's listening out there shouldn't be as regimented. But I think, when your podcast at Social Media Marketing World routinely hits 1 million downloads, I think, let's just temper expectations.
That warrants it, I think. Well.
So though I'm not there yet, but I would like to be. And this is why I like to be in spaces like this one with you and Mike Stelzner. Because you get to see a full gambit and you get to say, these are things I'd like to pick up and steal. And there's things, one of the, I always tell my clients, go and be a guest on somebody's show. The quickest way to learn how to run one is to go and be a guest.
Yep.
Cheat code. I'm going to say this. Your vision, if you can't see it, you can't create it. So one of the things that I think that many people need to understand and walk away with is give yourself permission to dream. What would you want it to look like? I asked this on the show last night, literally. what if in January 2023, what do you want your content? It doesn't matter what it is, fill in the blank, podcast, live show, web show, reels on Instagram, whatever. What would you want your content to fulfill in January 2023? Is it fulfilling that now? If not, what are the practical steps you need to take to get there? A lot of times we start with, this is where I am. Let me do this next step. Where are you stepping to? Give yourself a destination. This is vision. This is what vision is. What is my destination? Set your sights on the mountaintop. Keep it in view. Then when you get there, plant your flag, do your dance, right?
Yeah.
Have your celebration.
Yeah.
Give yourself space to commemorate the moment of having achieved this milestone. Then set your sights on the next mountain.
The next thing. When you say fulfill and destination, I want to make sure everyone's clear what you mean when you say that. Are you saying as far as impact? We're talking about numbers, analytics,
whatever your why is. See, this is the thing. We have to identify what the goal line is in order for us to do the touchdown or end zone dance when we get there. We can never do the dance if we don't know what it is. If we keep on pushing it, if we keep on changing it. So it is a person by person thing. One person said to me last night, I do live because I want to be an established leader in my niche. I'm like, bet. So now you know exactly what that line looks like. When people are coming to me for, thought leadership in this particular niche, now you know that, then I've arrived.
Yeah.
You have that goal line. I wouldn't necessarily make it something as arbitrary and out of your control as a subscriber count or, a podcast watch number. I wouldn't do that because sometimes, let's be clear, some topics just do better than others.
That's true.
Who does reality TV. He covers reality TV. Like he actually watches the shows with his audience online. He's got hundreds of thousands of subscribers and views. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Housewives of this,
I'm not going to lie. I love watching all the TLC shows. I'm like, commentary, click.
And your boy, he's covering all of them. And he just does so ridiculously well. Where on the other side, I have somebody who is literally changing lives with financial education. He's not doing as well.
Right. Yeah.
But the content he's sharing, it's off the chart. But if he gives himself the same metric for success as this other guy, he would call himself a failure. I don't think he's failing.
Right.
So it's very personal.
Yeah. All about making your difference, not just a difference. What are you called to do? Because
your difference,
that's completely different from what someone else is going to do. So you can't do that comparison. So I think that's good. I think that's good because I'm always a person when it comes to goal setting and setting the line, setting the mark. Okay, how are we going to measure? How are we going to know? Because if you don't even know when to celebrate.
No. And that's good. So, and if you never celebrate, you begin to feel like you're on a hamster wheel.
Yep, exactly.
And that's where burnout happens. That's where resentment takes place, where you start to question yourself, like, why am I doing this again? So 5,000%. You got to know when, you got to have a goal line so that you not only can give yourself some benchmarks, like I'm progressing, but also for you to be able to say, this is time to celebrate. Yeah. This is major. We've done this. Let's celebrate. So
absolutely. Man, this has been awesome. I love to ask to pretty much all my guests, and it is, hey, you're on the street, you're on the interstate, you have a billboard, it's sponsored by Kirk Nugent or it's sponsored by your company or whatever happens. And you have a message that you want everyone that drives by that billboard to see. What would it be?
Your live stream is your digital storefront. Don't let your digital storefront go to waste.
We're going to close it right there. We're going to have to go. All right, pull out the offering plates, y'all. Oh, man, Kirk Nugent, thank you so much for coming on the Build Your Vision show, man. This has been amazing. You deliver so much value to the BYV family. Wow. So you define your brand by layering your multiple gifts and multiple passions, not cutting them out. My content buckets are personal growth, spiritual growth, and comedy. If you look at my TikTok, you'll completely understand what I mean. You'll get it if you look at my TikTok. And even through this podcast, on certain topics that are more serious, there's a lighthearted airiness to it because that's my brand. That's me. And I lean into it. So how are you leaning into your brand? Kirk also showed us that if we want to stay on mission, focused and not distracted, we need to know our why. Now, there's an entire episode on this podcast dedicated to finding your why. It's episode 110. And I even made a free mini course that walks you through the step-by-step process of finding your why. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to buildyourvision.co/why. That's buildyourvision.co/why. Kirk is an amazing teacher, creator, and coach. And if you're an online content creator, especially if you're interested in live video, you want to check out this guy's YouTube channel. It's Kirk Nugent on YouTube. Or you might just want to get all of him, see exactly what he does, everything he does, his backstory, everything. Go to his website, kirknugent.com. I am a personal subscriber and fan of this gentleman. All right, guys, keep building your vision and your brand every single day because someone needs what you're building. I'll talk to you next week. Executive production by Cleavon Davis. Music production by Cleavon Davis and Christian Hernandez. The Build Your Vision podcast is a product of Build Your Vision, LLC.